Want to keep the conversation going, so I want to bring in our next guest to help break down the day of tariffs and what to look forward to next. Rob Schroeder with Market Watch. Thanks so much for joining us here, Rob. And well, it was a day that the market started out strong, and then we saw some sell-offs happening.
Good afternoon, Mike. Yeah, it did start strong, as you said. We're looking at some weakness now. Some of that probably is tariff related, some not. But what's certain is that these tariffs now have indeed snapped into place on countries from Afghanistan to Zimbabwe and everyone in between. Certain countries have higher rates, certain countries have lower rates. But many commentators and analysts say that this will eventually filter down to American consumers, American businesses having to pay more for the products that importers bring in from abroad. Now, the president has been making deals all along, including there in your intro, as you said, with a few nations, and that deal making continues apace.
And Rob, since this was a date on the calendar where we all knew that this date was coming, was this priced in with the market?
I think last week you saw a bit of surprise or at least a bit of short-term pain when these rates were first announced. The president did announce however, delay in the implementation to give U.S. authorities time to prepare to collect these duties. So right now, what we're looking at is the possibility of more, and in particular, sectoral tariffs, let's say. And by that, I mean on particular industries such as semiconductors or pharmaceuticals, drugs from abroad. So those are the sorts of things that the president is threatening now, even as he tries to make deals with countries, including China, including India, including Mexico.
Yeah, I'm glad you talked there about semiconductors, because we saw President Trump yesterday make mention there that there would be 100% tariff on these semiconductor companies if they don't have a presence in the U.S. What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's right. The president dropped that kind of in the middle of this announcement that he made at the White House with Apple. CEO Tim Cook was there by his side as Apple was announcing an investment of billions of dollars into the U.S. And this is the sort of thing that the president wants to inspire, let's say, in American companies, is more domestic manufacturing. Apple's doing exactly that. They can't do that across the board, of course, because they still get many of their products made abroad and then imported back to here. But with semiconductors, those are made in many factories abroad as well. And the president is trying to compel the same sort of behavior by threatening really this pretty staggering tariff, 100%, on these critical parts in many things, computers, phones, automobiles, and the like. So what he's trying to do here is change behavior. Whether that works wholesale or not remains to be seen. But it's not necessarily a zero-sum game, because you have some plants perhaps being opened domestically, some saying overseas. I don't think it's either or situation, but probably somewhere in the.
And Rob, I think a lot of people wanting to know, we heard President Trump mention this last week, even weeks prior, for some sort of down the line, maybe Americans would be getting a rebate check on these tariffs. Have you heard anything new on this, and what would that even look like?
He said that more than once, and I think that he's raised this kind of concept before with the concept of a Doge dividend from the reinventing government effort, if you like, that Elon Musk led. We haven't heard too much about that. I don't think that made it into the big, beautiful bill that is now enshrined into law. But the president has also, and I think more frequently, talked about using tariff revenue to pay down the U.S. national debt, which is a rather large number. It's more than $30 trillion, I believe. So it would take a lot of tariff revenue to do that. But at the same time, there's no question that the tariffs are bringing in revenue to the Treasury, to the coffers. And that does help with the budget deficit, even if the deficit is rather large.
And lastly, Rob, while that is helping, of course, maybe some bottom lines there with the U.S. Treasury, is it hurting Americans anywhere? Are they seeing any of the impacts already from these tariffs, or is it still too soon?
It depends on the company. I think it depends on the sector, but certainly most economists agree that tariffs are a tax and they are paid at some point by someone. Whether that means directly by the consumer in some cases, because companies have been passing those costs on, or if it's the importer when you're bringing in, say, a TV or an auto part or something like that into the US. Someone has to pay somewhere, and that usually translates to higher prices because really at its most basic level, once again, a tariff is a tax and it does hurt the wallet at some point along the chain of consumption.
There we go. Rob Schroeder breaking it down for us with Market Watch. We always appreciate it. Thanks so much for joining us and giving us some insight along the way. We appreciate it.
Thank you.